Missourians are voting on a potential income tax change in the upcoming primary election, and that amendment could change could also impact donations for charities. Our Missouri Capitol reporter Hannah Falcon explains.
It definitely will shift how we fund and operate our state if Amendment 5 passes.
One of Democratic Representative Stephanie Hines' concerns about Amendment 5 is that it will eliminate tax incentives for donations. Missouri taxpayers can get up to a 70% tax credit when donating to a qualifying charity, as well as use their income tax return to donate directly to state trust funds benefiting 24 charities.
Think about those, the families that are going to be more reliant on food pantries. Well, those food pantries are going to need more donors to be able to take care of those families. And if that incentive isn't there, then you may not be able to get the donors that you need to help assist those families in need.
Many nonprofits did not want to comment on Amendment 5. The Missouri Catholic bishops issued a statement against Amendment 5, saying, quote, "While the church does not prescribe any particular tax model, she teaches that every system of taxation must serve the common good, be guided by justice and equity, and take into account each person's ability to contribute." Governor Mike Kehoe tells me incentives for donations are important to him.
We have a lot of non-for-profits around the state that rely heavily on it, including our pregnancy resource centers and some of our alternatives to abortion.
Is there another way you think the state can incentivize that?
Yes, there's definitely other ways. For one, even though I'm not a fan of corporate income taxes, it still keeps our corporate income tax structure in place. And so the tax credits are still available to those entities.
That's going to be really, really challenging to be able to incentivize that from a individual giving standpoint.
Election day is next Tuesday, and no excuse absentee voting is already underway in Missouri. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon.